So I got a viewer request for kind of talking about the builds that I do in each matchup, and I'm pretty comfortable with my PvZ right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that one first. I'm going to just go ahead and play through this replay the entire 8 minutes and kind of talk about what I'm doing, and then we'll go back and analyze a couple of specific points. So while we're in the early game here, let me give you kind of the broad strokes of my plan in PvZ, and let me caveat all this by saying this is certainly not an optimized, GM level, perfect, beautiful build, but I think depending on where you're at in your play, that could actually be kind of an asset for you, because this is a very simple, broad strokes type of build that I've been having a lot of success with from, honestly, like silver all the way up until diamond. So if you're anywhere in that range, I think you might be able to benefit from this. So basically, this is a PvZ build where we're going to try to hit a timing push with a couple of Immortals, about 6 Sentries, a Warp Prism, and as many Adepts as we can kind of wrangle by that timing. Tends to be around 14 or so, but it depends from game to game. So our opening is a standard 19 Nexus. We rally the 18th Probe down to our natural, and we then rally into gas. We're actually going to pull workers off of minerals and onto gas to ensure that we can get our glaives started as soon as possible. You'll see that in a moment here. So we get our Nexus. Of course, the Cyber Core is going to go down immediately afterwards. We're going to then take another gas. Come on, Cyber Core. There it is. Cool. We're going to hurry and take another gas. I believe this game that I move a probe over, but maybe not. Looks like I'm not going to this game. I do think that tends to work out a little bit better. I put my pylon here here at the edge of the base, because one thing that we are kind of worried about with this build is lane drops. That tends to be pretty problematic for us just because of when it hits and how much it hits with. So we want to get vision in the main if we can. See, we immediately start an Adept and our Warp Gate, and we got to have our Probe boogie down here to place our Twilight. I don't worry too much about the Zerg scouting this yet. I honestly haven't seen anybody react to this build. So if you're anywhere like high plat, low diamond, or below, I wouldn't worry about trying to hide your tech. I think that it's more beneficial for me, at least, to just have my wall secure and not worry about, somehow if I've gotten tricked and I don't see a link flood coming, I don't have to worry about scrambling to get that wall. Of course, we have our Adept on hold position here, completing the wall off. We're going to get 3 Adepts before Warp Gate. That's actually pretty important. And you'll see in a minute, when the third one's about to pop out, we shade Adepts number 1 and 2 across the map. We immediately start our glaives upgrade. This game, I'm chronoing my glaives and my Warp Gate. I'm actually not convinced that I'm chronoing very well in this build, so maybe somebody can shoot me their opinion or some critique on this. I've tried it various different ways, and no matter what I do, I always seem to hit it around the same timing. So it could be that I'm doing something really wrong, or it could be that it just doesn't matter that much for what I'm trying to hit. Note that our shade's about to finish, our Adept pops out, we immediately hold position her to get that wall tight again. We need to send these 2 Adepts, even if you're not comfortable doing it. Send them and suicide them into their base, because you need to know if they're doing something other than standard sort of macro play into Linkbane Hydra. The next thing that we drop down after, I'm going to pause for a minute because there's a few things happening pretty quickly here and I want to cover all of them. The next thing that we're going to do after we get our 3 Adepts, Warp Gate, and our Glaives is we're going to drop 2 Gateways. I believe this game I placed them slightly late. That's something that I'm kind of struggling with and I need to get better at. I believe that these gateways can be done right around the time the Warp Gate finishes, and we can see that that isn't the case here. Our Warp Gate is right about to be done and the gateways aren't going to be ready. So ideally we want to fix that. The next thing that we want to make, so you can think about this, there's a great Day9 Daily, I'll try to link it below in the description, on how to think about a build order. And his basic sort of TLDR from that video is think about it in terms of like bundles of things that you do. So one example of that is we placed our second gas and we placed this pylon, right? Another bundle is we get these 2 gateways. Another bundle is we get our robo and a gas. This is really important. If you don't get this gas, it's going to slow the build down a lot. I had a lot of trouble as I was learning this build by either forgetting to take this gas on time or forgetting to put probes into it. I still sometimes forget to put the probes in. That's something that I'm really trying to work on and refine. Last thing that's happening in this little kind of busy moment in the build is we've got these adepts, which I've kind of shaded to sort of a safe-ish spot between where their second and either choice of third could be. Ideally to give me breathing room to get all these macro tasks done and then be able to look at the adepts. Here, especially if you're newer, totally don't worry about what happens with them. You can just shade them into the main and let them die. The point is you get vision of their stuff, because right now, all we've seen is they opened hatch gas pool, and we have no idea if some kind of crazy all-in's coming. If we see an Evo chamber, we need to be worried about drops. I've struggled a bit with this build against roach all-ins. So, bottom line, we need to get vision, even if the adepts die. If you can kill some drones and you have the APM for that, that's great. If you can get the adepts out alive, also great, but the most important thing is figuring out what they're doing. Okay, so back to kind of my vision, playing through the rest of this build. So here, I chose to shade into the main and attack drones at the natural. I feel like this works out pretty well. We end up getting, I think, 3 drone kills this game with the adepts, and we do lose 1 because I'm not being super, super careful. You'll see I run past the queen, which is kind of foolish here. I should have run away from her. Just making sure we don't pylon block. I think we actually... Okay, so we're really slow on morphing our gateways. That's pretty bad. This game I was trying to micro my adepts a little bit more. Obviously, that's not as important as making sure that our macro's on point. So we start our Immortal production. And from here, you can either warp in adepts or sentries. If you've been sloppy with your gas, you're going to have to warp in adepts. I tend to favor the sentries if I possibly can. If the opponent is looking like they're going to be aggressive, you're going to need more firepower than sentries will give you to hold. Just 1 adept at the door isn't really going to be enough. But I like getting the sentries out to try to bank energy as early as I possibly can. So we want to make sure that we have constant Immortal production here. We make sure to queue the second one right before the first one finishes. And we're also trying really hard to get our second set of sentries warped in. I believe I was short gas in this game, and I can't recall if I realized that I hadn't made that 3rd sentry and made an adept or not. Let's take a quick look. Looks like I actually have a warping up. So this game I just forgot. That's obviously not ideal. The other thing that happened while I was talking about that is we're starting 4 more gateways. So we do this kind of explosion of gateways at around this time, and we're gonna hopefully get these down and have them ready by the time we take our 3rd base. So our Immortal's about to finish. We start a prism. We should be warping in here. Okay, it looks like still no 6th sentry. Okay, there it is. Cool. So notice we are down 1 adept because I didn't macro that properly, right? We had that 1 warp in round that went all the way until the other 2 gates were ready. So you can see there's a lot of sloppiness, there's a lot of imperfect stuff going on here, but kind of just do your best with this. Again, it's a broad strokes type of build. Note, we leave 1 adept and keep the door shut. Always, always, always. I don't care. No matter what else you're doing, keep that door shut. I don't care if you're bronze or GM, keep the door shut. Yeah, so again, it's a broad strokes build. We're just doing our best to get as much as we can and making sure that we hit this sharp timing push. So we get our 3rd base down. We plunk down a bunch of pylons because we know we just made a bunch of gateways, right? The rate at which we're going to start filling our supply is going to accelerate. So where before we're kind of placing pylons 2 at a time, we're now like, okay, I know I'm gonna kind of shoot up and supply really quickly. The other thing that we just did is we send 2 hallucinated phoenixes. I like 2, and I like sending them together because sometimes if you happen to run past a couple of hydras, unluckily, or a bunch of queens kind of grouped together, maybe the Zerg is expecting oracles for some reason. you can get one hallucination shot down, and it's really pretty feel bad when that happens because you might not get the vision that you need. The main thing that we're looking for here is, do they have a spire? Mutas are the one thing that will ruin our day with this build, and if we know that they're coming, we can completely still crush, but we absolutely must know. If you forget to do this, which I did a lot of the time, there's going to be a warp-in round that we make underneath our prism right before we attack. Instead of making Adepts, I want you to make blind Stalkers if you forget this. If you don't forget it, go ahead and make the Adepts, but if you're like, oh crap, I have no vision of the base, and I don't know if there's Spire Tech, go ahead and make that round of Stalkers. It's not ideal, but it's way better to have less ideal units than it is to lose to nothing shooting up, right? That's a super duper bummer. So we've got our prism out. I always keep that on a separate hotkey. It's pretty important in terms of being able to double tap and jump your camera back to the prism to warp in, and also just for keeping the prism out of harm's way while you're fighting. Now, I want to highlight something that goes really poorly for me this game. You can see on the minimap already, we've got this big mess of stuff. Half my army's over here. I've got a fresh warp in of Adepts that have just run into a ton of Lings. I was actually a little bit surprised that there were Lings coming across the map at this timing. Normally Zergs are kind of passive if they're doing the build that my opponent's doing. But hey, props to the Zerg. They're out there on the map. They, are kind of getting some early warning that something's coming. I guess, sort of unluckily for the Zerg, I kind of luck out because I'm playing poorly here. My army should be moving out altogether. Absolutely should be moving out together. If it had, either the Zerg would see all of our stuff, if it were here, or they would see none of it, but we'd be trying to hold back at home. So you can already see I've got a group of Adepts here. I've got my Immortal Sentry here. I've got another batch of Adepts here. It's all kind of ragtag and it's a mess. You don't want to do this. You want to move up in a nice tight ball with everything together. So I end up kind of, it slows down my push a little bit, and we lose a few Adepts here kind of needlessly. But I end up basically doing okay here, and we sort of chase the Lings off, and we get our push together. We group everything up eventually. Here, I think we have another little bit of an issue, so again, really not doing a good job keeping my things together this game. I've got all my sentries with only a few Adepts and Immortals to support them going up the ramp this way. I'm trying to meet my army here. And then we've got an Immortal and some Adepts all on their own, running around the long way to get here. So I did a really crappy job this game of that, but we end up getting pretty lucky in that the Zerg doesn't catch us out. Now, you can see my camera is checking the Zerg space. It happened pretty quickly, so I'll go ahead and pause and look back here. So what we see, Bane Nest, obviously we knew the spawning pool was there. Hydras, 2 Evo Chambers. So we know they're on Lingbane Hydra and they're trying to hit an upgrade timing and get us, right? And I'm going to go ahead and check the other 2 bases as well, just to make sure there's no cheeky Spire behind the mineral line or something like that. So you see we quickly pop and check all of them. We go, oh, okay, 4th base. So this is a really good sign for us, right? Because if they're investing in the 4th base, they're not going to have as many units. It is pretty normal for them to take a 3rd base there. Notice after I finished making my prism, I made an observer and I rallied it across the map. This is because I've had a couple of games where lurkers will pop right as this push is hitting. It's not a lot of them, but obviously you have no detection. Even like 2 lurkers is kind of a problem, right? You're going to really struggle. And Adepts like to line up, right? Can you imagine lurkers find shooting through this? So we don't want that. This game, I attack this 4th base as it's making, and then realize, okay, that's a bad idea. I think even the amount of time and warning that I just gave the Zerg by doing that was a mistake. Because really, we want to be doing this, right? So we force field the ramp, kill half of their army, walk up through the force field, kill the second half. And you'll notice I'm floating tons and tons of money. If you have the APM, again, you want to be back at your base kind of dumping money for sort of a follow-up. I like High Templar Tech and Forges, maybe some extra gateways, just depending on where your economy's at. Another thing that I didn't do this game that I absolutely should have on my sort of pre-push checklist So that checklist being like group the army up, send the hallucinations, make sure you have an observer making and rally across the map, and finally, transfer your probes. Oh my gosh, why do we have this third base if we're going to let 25 probes sit on the mineral line of the map? So again, totally imperfect run through of this build. This is just me playing Diamond League, low Diamond League ladder. But I thought that a real life example would be a little bit better to show you guys this build than, me doing it perfectly against, no opponent and then being like, here, look, now you do this on the ladder, right? Because stuff happens and your brain is busy. So here we get a ton of kills on all of these lings. We tap our camera back to the prism. We warp in a ton of adepts. I was a little bit slow with my rapid fire there. I think I was had the adrenaline going and just didn't hotkey properly. Force field again. Looks like we take one Bane hit, but we already killed, I think, 3 or 4 while they were force fielded away. And I think the Zerg just ends up GGing here because there's not a lot they can do, right? They have pretty much no army, and we're just going to warp in more and more and more here. Another thing that I did that I would recommend is take 2 to 4 adepts, no more than that. Probably 2 would have even been better. And doing it even a little bit earlier than I did would also be better. And just shade them into either the main or the natural. And you're not going to look past that. You're not going to pay... Cat is really mad at me. You're not going to look at them. You shade them into the mineral line and it's hands off. And the idea is you basically traded a little bit of your army for the opponent either having to divide their attention or potentially lose a lot of workers. The other reason that I like doing it, and the reason that I say it's important to do it earlier than I did this game, again, I think I had the adrenaline pumping. I don't know, I just wasn't playing my best this game. But the reason that I think it's good to shade them earlier is you're going to get some vision off of the shades now that they unnerfed vision a little bit, where you might kind of get an idea of where you want to be under the bed. You can jump under this time. There you go. You have a nice little nap. You can get vision of their army, and you might make decisions differently depending on what you see. If nothing else, you'll get an idea of their composition. So we'll kind of keep going through here. Keep warping under that prism the entire time, and ideally you want to keep Guardian Shield up. I'm kind of playing sloppy this game. But we've got that shade in the mineral line now, and our opponent GG's out. So that's basically it. There's not a ton to it. Generally speaking, when I do this on ladder, PvZ is my best matchup, probably because this is the only matchup where I have a really well-defined build that hits sharp timing. And I tend to be a really macro-focused player, so forcing myself to attack is really, really good. I think that for anybody who kind of tends to be passive like I do, this is a really, really good way to choose a build order that will get you out of that comfort zone. And you can kind of count on your sort of innate macro ability and your innate passiveness to be able to pull you through the long game, even if this push doesn't work. So let's say I didn't crush the whole army, right? Maybe they go, okay, I'm going to sacrifice my bases. I'm going to keep my army at the natural, and we're going to, just try to get as many drones out as we can. Our plan would be kill the third, again, go home, make High Templar tech, forges, chrono the heck out of the forges, maybe extra gateways, and kind of just say, okay, I'm up a base, you're Zerg, you need to be up a base, not even, you need to be up a base, and you're down a base. So I'm going to sit here, I'm going to mass Archons, and I'm going to get you at 200 with some upgrades, or something like that. But generally speaking, you're kind of just going to kill them with this if you execute it well. So let's look at a couple of key points here. So I mentioned before, we're a bit slow to move out. We really want to be at around the 7-minute timing. We really want to have our army right here. And the reason for that is we want to be able to either get a base kill, get a bunch of drone kills, or just straight up kill their army and win. The more time that we give them, the closer they're going to get to, here, let's look at the everyone vision, to all of their goodies finishing. So if you look at this game, right, let's jump ahead to when the fight starts. So we gave them extra time, right? But imagine that the Zerg macro is just a little bit better, right? then so imagine that both I play a little bit better and the Zerg plays a little bit better. Then this fight is going to maybe happen at around 7 minutes, right? So if I don't play well and the Zerg does, all of a sudden, Bane speed's close to finishing, Hydra upgrade's close to finishing, upgrades are close to finishing, and now we're in trouble, right? We really, really don't want them to get all of their tools before the fight hits. That's kind of the premise behind what we're trying to do here. We want to hit before Hydraling Bane is totally ready and at its strongest point. So if the Zerg gets played better and I played as sloppy as I did this game, those upgrades are done and we're in some trouble, right? As it is, we were both kind of playing a little bit sloppy this game, and no Banes make it through before I can force field. We have a field day here. We kill all the Lings, and it looks like I think 4 Banes, something like that. Fast forward through that. Yeah, so we get 4 Banelings, only 1's remaining. We saw that it hits a little bit later, but it doesn't even kill anything. It just takes shields. So that's the first important thing. I called out some of them as we went, but let's just make sure we highlight a couple of those one more time. So we'll go through kind of quickly here. I'll call these out. So again, make sure your wall is tight. If you don't know how to wall on a given map, go in, AFK for 10 minutes till you have a ton of minerals, and then make yourself a bunch of Immortals so you can tear your wall down over and over, and just build the wall, tear it down, build the wall, tear it down, over and over and over again until you get it right. So 2 Adepts, super, super important. If you can time it out like I do here, where the shade finishes right as the Adept pops out, that's awesome. I only learned to do that recently. We just want to get that door shut, and we want the Adepts across as quickly as we can get them. So as long as you can do those 2 things, it doesn't need to be that pretty. Pile on here to make sure that if there are drops, we see them. And again, when the 2 Adepts go across, we're looking for an early Evo Chamber, because that generally signals drop. We also can catch things like a quick Roach Warren, quick Lair, things like that. And I think that pretty much covers it. I think all of the other sort of finer points of the build I kind of covered as we went through. If you have any questions or if I was vague about something, definitely hit me up on Twitter at AaronSC2, and I'm happy to help. And again, like I say, I'm still refining this. I know, like, particularly in this replay, I didn't do everything perfectly. So if you have thoughts, especially on what I should be doing with my chrono, because I can't figure it out, man. I keep trying in different ways, and I always seem to move out at about 6:45 and hit at around 7, no matter what I do, what I chrono. So yeah, I'm definitely, open to learning with you guys, and I hope that this helps you.